Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zachary and I've been taking a little break away from YouTube, school, design things, and I've returned back to the US to spend the holidays with my family. But now I'm starting to get back into the flow of everything for this new and exciting year that I am very scared for actually. If this is your first time watching my channel, I'm a designer who normally lives in Milan, Italy, and I go to the Politecnico di Milano, and I study industrial design. I'm in the master's program. I wanted to answer a question that I really get often on Instagram. People DM me this question, is what are the main differences between going to design school in the US and going to design school in Europe? Now, the United States and Europe is going to be kind of a different comparison because Europe is multiple countries while the US, I guess, is kind of multiple different states with different types of cultures in each state. In this video, I'm not suggesting whether or not you go to school in the United States or in Europe. It's just to make you aware of some of the differences, the key differences between going to school in these different locations. And hopefully from this video, you'll be able to make a decision that's right for you. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. The next upcoming videos are going to be really important for up-and-coming design students, people who are thinking about applying to the Politecnico di Milano. The next couple of videos, I'm going to be really diving into working on my design thesis. I'm going to be telling you the different ins and outs of me writing it and the research and the new projects that I'm working on for this design thesis. I'm also going to be trying to find a design internship, which has been really difficult, but I hope to share with you my tips and tricks and the things that I've been using to kind of get me leads to find an internship. And just generally after I graduate, trying to find a job in the EU, a design job that will actually pay me to live. So if these are any of the things that you're interested in, please subscribe because I think they'll be really beneficial to you. There's a really big focus on research in Italy about focusing really on the scientific empirical numbers to be able to start your project. However, in my design process, that's not necessarily how I like to design things. Research is extremely important whether you're trying to start the project or actually put the product to market. However, you can do as much research as you want, as much trend research, trying to find specifically what everyone's looking at, but that doesn't matter. At some point, you're gonna have to choose a topic. I think everything's been basically done before, but it's up to you to decide from within yourself to design something different. If you want something to be different, you can't necessarily look at all these trends because people are already doing things with these trends. It's nothing new. So that was something that I felt like I enjoyed more in the United States. The curriculum a little bit more because in the US I felt like we were more inside the studio. We more had a hands-on, more in the sense of like making things when I was back home. This is not to say that we don't do that in the studio in Italy. However, back home I really felt like that's what we were mainly doing. Now, that's not to say that I don't think that you wouldn't be in the studio if you specifically wanted to do something for class. However, most of the things that we were doing were more conceptual and more with renderings, 3D modeling, along those lines, versus it just being specifically being in the studio as much. And I miss that. Our bachelor programs tend to be about 4 years. Now in Europe, they are normally structured in like a 3 years for the bachelor program, followed by a 2-year master's program. So that's basically, I'm in a 2-year master's program for industrial design right now. Just generally, just a little different. So for example, if you're trying to, I guess, finish your degree faster than you would want to do in the US, if you go to Europe, you are more likely to be able to finish your degree a little bit faster if you're in a bachelor's program. Generally, the masters are 2 years, just like in the US, so you may be in the same timeline as if you went there or here. However, just be aware that that's also an option as well. Another huge factor that you would want to consider before moving to the US or moving to Europe is the cost. And this was the number one factor why I literally moved across the Atlantic Ocean to go to school, and it is the cost of tuition. Now, in the US, we are notorious for having extremely expensive tuitions. For example, I believe when I went to ASU, overall, everything, I went from 2016 to 2020. I believe in the tuition, everything cost like $46,000 with everything totaled. And I never lived on campus. So if I lived on campus, that price would be even more. Now, in Europe, the tuition costs vary widely depending on the country and the institution. However, you are generally going to have lower tuition in Europe, and maybe even free tuition depending on the country that you go to. That's a really big thing. That makes a really big difference for a designer. Now, the reason why I say that is because it's not like, I'm not dissing being a designer, I am a designer, but it's not like you're being a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, where you have a specific track to follow and you do step 1, step 2, step 3, and you move on to your career. Being a designer is different for every single designer. You may be able to graduate school, and as soon as you graduate school, you get a job at a huge pharmaceutical company. You're designing bottles and the bottles that the chemicals go into or whatever, and you're making lots of money. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you don't want to work for a huge corporation. Maybe you want to work for a smaller studio where you're able to actually make a difference and actually design things that are conceptually different and have different shapes and different forms and do things that people have never seen before. But maybe you don't get paid the same amount of money. So that's a really big issue if you have a lot of student loans when you have to go to school. Because if you have thousands and thousands of dollars in student loans, you're going to be a little bit more money oriented when it comes to trying to find a job. Like, you're not going to necessarily focus on creative freedom when you're choosing a job. You're going to be focused on trying to find a job that pays you well so that you're able to actually live and pay off those student loans. Deciding on design school, whether to go into Europe or the US, location matters. Now, when you're in a place like Milan, where it's a fashion capital and a design capital, you're setting yourself up to have a lot more design opportunities versus moving to, I don't know, some random state where design is not really big. And all those design events will have opportunities for you to not only showcase your work, to exhibit the things that you're working on, but for job opportunities for you to be able to want to work in different types of design sectors. Now, what I like about going to school in Europe is you have the option, well, hopefully, if you are an EU student, good for you. You got all these different countries that you can go to. But you have many different cultures and countries relatively close to you in Europe. So you can go to France, you can go to Italy, you can go to Germany. Now, being in the United States, you have the opportunity for working with some of the biggest companies in the world. And those companies offer competitive pay. I'm just giving a little brief overview of like my experiences, and I look forward to showing you guys a lot more things. Also, because of this next semester, we're not really going to be in class so much. We're going to be working on our own projects, our own internships, just our own things. And I look forward to seeing you guys back in Italy.